Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Strickland. I'm your host, Shwin and this is episode 489. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host Stacy. That is at StacyPatton89 on Twitter. Stacy, how are you doing on? I guess a victory. I don't know. It's not a victory Monday, right? Because we're playing on Monday. Victory Sunday night, though.
On to the next one.
Yes, on to the next one. The Knicks win 123-112 in a very interesting game, I would say. We're going to talk about that. Before I do that, I do have to make a few announcements. First, that Strickland has a YouTube channel where you may be watching this podcast. If you are and you've not done so already, please hit like, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment. That'd be a huge help to us. The Strickland also has merchandise, which you can find on our website at www.thestrick.land. There's a link that'll take you to the merchandise store, and there's all kinds of cool stuff that you can find on there, like t-shirts, sweatshirts, hats, coffee mugs, water bottles, you name it, we've got it. The Strickland also has a Patreon, which you can subscribe to. There are a number of different tiers. There's a $6 tier that gets you access to Pod Strickland's podcast that I host every Friday with Prez. You also get access to Takes from Naviga's Bozos, a podcast hosted by Andrew Steele, aka Doug, along with Zach Blatter, and you get access to the Strickland Discord where the conversation never stops. There are further tiers. There's a $9 tier that gets you access to Strickland Roll, my solo pod where I rant and everything and more. You also get access to wonderful premium articles by Matthew Miranda, one of the best in the business. And you get access to Strickland NFL, which you guessed it, is a podcast hosted by Konstantin Menchikos and Desmond Novak. That is about the NFL. There are further tiers. There's a $15 tier, $30 tier, $50 tier, and $100 tier. Those come with a variety of additional benefits, like listening on pod recordings, merchandise discounts, and even potentially hosting a podcast alongside yours truly one day. Whether you choose to subscribe or not, no sooner possible that you. So, without further ado, let's get started. Again, the Knicks win 123-112 in resounding fashion, I guess, in the end against the Pistons. It was not easy. It was not a straightforward victory, but the Knicks did take care of business. They go on a pretty amazing 21-0 run in the fourth quarter of game one to kind of not just take control of the lead, but put the game away. I don't know. I guess just looking at the game, looking at it in totality, what were your thoughts? Because my gut feeling was I thought the Knicks were unlucky in a lot of ways to only be up 2 at halftime. They were 57-55 at halftime. And watching back the third quarter, watching it back, I thought their offense, they're just not just their kind of the efficiency they scored at, but just their process on offense is a little bit flawed in the third quarter. But I actually thought the defense was okay. And I thought that they got themselves into trouble with a couple of unfortunate turnovers. But then also just some bad luck. I thought the Pistons made a lot of tough shots in this game. And once that well dried up in the fourth quarter, and yes, the Knicks did a great job of turning them over in the fourth quarter. I think they forced 8 turnovers. If not 8, then it was definitely 7 in the fourth quarter. I thought the Knicks did a really, really good job on defense in this game overall. There's definitely stuff for them to clean up in terms of, hey, anytime Malik Beasley's on the floor, you're gonna need to make sure you keep eyes on him and not let him get us wide open for threes. But really, aside from that, I thought the Knicks played a really good defensive game.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't. I would be more critical of the defense than the offense. I think Detroit is a very good defensive team. We've seen that from their ratings over the regular season. I thought the Knicks didn't really have too much difficulty getting good looks. Cat was able to get to his spots. Brunson was getting to his spots most of the game. His process was a little off for the first 3 quarters. When the shots started falling, there wasn't much Detroit could do. Even at the end of the third quarter, they had 83 points. It's not like their offense struggled much. And that was welcome to see. Detroit put, obviously there were some circumstances there. Osar got in foul trouble, which, the Knicks were able to exploit a little bit. They put wings on Brunson. That didn't work. They tried putting wings on Cat. That didn't work. We'll see if they go back to more Duran and Stewart on him. It seemed on offense like there wasn't a whole lot to be concerned about as a Knick fan. We'll see what kind of adjustments Bickerstaff has. On the other side, I do think it was it was what you'd come to expect from the Knicks, with some tweaks. I thought they had Cat be more aggressive at the point of attack to mixed, but overall, I think on net positive results. He had 6 stocks, was just generally much more active, getting his hands in passing lanes, deflecting the ball.
Well, I would throw this back at you, not to interrupt you, but I would throw this back at you. When you say that he's more active, I mean, wouldn't you say that's likely a consequence of the fact that he was playing closer to the level and like playing more aggressive coverages? Because to me, like what this really confirmed, and look, we're never going to get the answer to this question, right? We have no idea why Tibbs played the entire season with Cat in a pretty deep drop for the. I think we can at least say that for the vast majority of it. I don't know why that was the case. It was the case. Like why it was doesn't really matter. That just was. It was. But I think what we saw tonight is, look, he's never going to be a perfect defender. Or sorry, not tonight, but last night. While he's never going to be a perfect defender, there are definitely coverages where you give him a lot better chance to be, at minimum a neutral guy and at best a true positive player. So that's what I would throw back at you, because I don't think the stocks and deflections were necessarily a case of, and actually you've talked about this a lot, where you didn't think like effort was necessarily the issue all the time for the Knicks on defense. It was more, whatever. We don't need to get into what it was, but it was like a lot of schematic stuff. And I would say that yesterday probably lent a lot of credence to things you've been saying for a while.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Yeah, he was more aggressive. He was more in the fight. Even when he got isolated, I don't think it was just being at the level more, but yeah, he was kind of in the fight more. So you're there. We know that he struggles with kind of backpedaling, with some of the difficulties in space. So shrink that space. And when he gets beat, there's a higher risk there. And we saw it yesterday, right? There was one play where Cade split a double team.
Yeah. Pause.
There is less of a risk of that against this team, I think, than if you're playing Cleveland. That is a huge risk against Donovan Mitchell. That's a big risk against Darius Garland, right? Playing to the level and just getting beat. Cade is a talented player. I don't want to shortchange his talent, but he's a little bit more in that.
He's methodical.
He's methodical, right? Bigger. He's not a blow-by guy. So it made more sense. And, and I think the other part of it, you saw also, there was a possession late. I think it was highlighted in Colin's recap, where, Cat is essentially in a 2-on-1. I think it was Duran. It was off Cat was back. It's Duran in the paint in like a 2-on-1 with Osar in the dunker spot. This is not a situation Cat plays well, frankly. But he positions himself just well enough where Duran has to throw the pass over the top. It gets there, and Osar's in good position, but Cat's able to close him, and Osar can't just go up. He comes out, Hart gets there, and it's a shot clock violation. So they just measuring those space, those little things. I think Cat deserves credit. I think Tibbs leaned into it, and this is a good matchup for that. But to your point, like, yeah, they were a little bit unlucky. You can say that the Pistons shot well. You can also say the Pistons aren't a great three-point shooting team and took a lot of threes. On the other hand, most of those threes are coming. Beasley took 12. I don't think you can say you had a very successful game. 6 for 12 is maybe a little higher than you expect, but he is that level of shooter.
It also felt like a night where 6 of 12 was not like some fluky nonsense.
Yeah.
Like
he had a lot of good looks.
For the shots he got. Yeah.
Tobias Harris got a lot of good looks in the first half. The mid-range stuff you generally live with, but a lot of it was uncontested. Got some open looks from three. And Hardaway Jr., who is, not some great player, he can shoot the three. So the Knicks gave the vast majority of the three-point attempts to those three players. I think during the 21-0 run, they were more engaged. There was more ball pressure. And you saw that one team has a lot of veteran players, has been in the playoffs, knows what it's like. And you saw the other team looked like a team, frankly, you hate to be reductive in all this, but a team that had played with poise for 3 quarters, had been a very mentally tough team. It looked like a team where their best player was playing his first playoff game. And they were all playing, for many of them, their first playoff game at Madison Square Garden on the road, trying to close out as an underdog. So that showed up, but I think the real takeaway for me is that if the Knicks just run their stuff on offense, this is not a team that can stop them consistently. And this isn't a team that has many ways to attack them on defense. I thought they had a good game plan against Cade, to your point on defense. OG, I think, did a really good job. They were willing to let the shooters beat them. They shifted that throttle a little bit more in the fourth quarter. And there's trade-offs. I mean, Cade got going a little bit more in the second half, but overall, you have to be encouraged. And I just don't think there's a whole lot of answers Detroit has on defense against the Knicks.
So what I would kind of say about the defense, I thought Tobias made a lot of bullshit. Like, gonna be honest, he had a fucking the most bullshit fucking pull-up three.
He had a lot of open shots, though.
He had a bullshit pull-up three and the first half.
Yeah, but there was not a hand in his face. It was deep. But...
Yes, it was. OG's right in his face on that shot. OG's right in his face on that shot. He's got his hand right in his face on that shot. Right in his face.
Not jumping, though.
Yeah, but that's because, like, it's one of those things where he's jumping forward. If you jump, you're almost going to automatically get called for a foul.
I get that, but there was some space. Anyway, I don't want to call it complete bullshit. That's a shot.
Yeah, I thought that's a shot where, considering the shots considering the fact that he scored 22 points in the first half. This guy hasn't scored 22 points in a fucking half since, like, I don't know, fucking Mother Teresa was alive.
I think he scored like 35 the entire series against the Knicks last year.
Right. Yeah. He had a fucking half that, like, whatever you want to say about the Knicks defense, Tobias Harris scoring 22 points in half is a massive outlier. And it wasn't like he got 11 layups, right? Like, he had to hit some jump shots. To your point, yes. Were some of them like some open middies? Yeah, of course. But, look, we can sit here and talk about Tobias made some open jumpers. Tim Hardaway Jr. popped open a couple times. Malik Beasley popped open a couple times. I think what this tells you is exactly what Tibbs' strategy is going into this series. And whether somebody disagrees or agrees or however you feel about it, this is his bet. His bet is very, very simple. He is not going to let Cade Cunningham go off in this series. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. If Cade Cunningham goes off, it's going to be on a diet of extremely, extremely difficult shots. It is not going to be because he just wriggles open and walks into 13 easy midi pull-ups in drop coverage like he got through the regular season. He is making this a series where he's like, I don't think you have enough juice outside of Cade to keep up with us. That's the bet he's making. And to be completely honest with you, I think it's a pretty reasonable bet. For as explosive as Malik Beasley can be as a three-point shooter, and what Tim Hardaway Jr. can do at times as a three-point shooter, and what Tobias Harris did yesterday, I mean, the rest of it is whatever. Like, Jalen Duren, I think he's a really talented offensive player. I'm certainly higher on him than you are. But he's not, like, think about the way he gets his points, right? It's not like this is not a guy who's going to explode for like 25 and a quarter or something. Like, they don't have guys that can go off like that. They're not explosive in that way. Like, Malik Beasley probably had as good of a first half as you could expect from him. He hit 4 threes, 12 points. Like, that's not ideal, obviously, for the Knicks. And 2 of those threes were completely wide open, by the way. Again, those are the threes you need to clean up. But you had a couple that were contested. One of them was like, he was like fading in the corner. You're like, okay, well, what the hell are you going to do with that one? Like, you just got to accept that. OG's right in his face. He got his hand up. He hits a fading corner 3. Like, you got to live with that. But that's what the Knicks, I think that, forget the Knicks, that's what I think Tibbs is willing to live with, is he is making the bet that Cade Cunningham, you're the only guy on this team that I respect as a creator. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm not letting you get to your spots. I'm not letting you get comfortable. He put OG Anunoby on him right from the jump. And OG Anunoby right from the jump was right in his fucking grill all night. All night he was in his grill. And, I think he ended up with 21 points, 12 assists. I couldn't
6
tell
turnovers
you.
too.
Yeah. I mean, the 6 turnovers are, I was going to get to that.
And 21 shots. Yeah.
Yeah. He had 21 points on 21 shots. Like, who cares? That's basically a win, right? When you're talking about 1 point per possession, or 1 point per shot for the primary creator. That's a pretty big win for the Knicks. And one of those, let's not forget, was a total fluky banked in three in garbage time, more or less. Like, and to your point, like the 12 assists he had, I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you, I really struggled to think of more than a couple that were like, I remember watching and was like, oh, what a great pass. There were a couple that were like, yeah, he had a great pass. Like he had a lob, I think to Dern or maybe Stewart. I forgot who it was. He had a couple kickouts for threes, but like he was not puncturing the defense and creating a endless cascades of like necessary rotations. I thought the Knicks kept him pretty much in check, and I thought they did a good job of understanding who to and who to not rotate to as shooters. Like there were a couple times he swung it out to Dennis Schroeder, and they were just like, "Okay, we're gonna close out to you like 2 steps away because we're gonna dare you to make that shot." He hit a three one time, I think, at one point, and that was cool for him. Congratulations to him. But they were really disciplined. I thought this was a really, really good reflection on Tom Thibodeau and the work he's done over this past week. Because look, if I'm going to be critical of the guy, and I've been critical of the guy all year, I should give him credit where it's due. And I thought their defensive performance, in terms of their discipline, in terms of their execution, and what I believe their goals were in this game, were pretty close. I'm not going to say perfect, but they were pretty close to excellent. At bare minimum, I'd say they were very good. And I would say outside of the third quarter, they were excellent on defense. And, I thought the other thing they did defensively very well was basically just OG Anunoby existing. Like, I thought he played a fucking amazing defensive game. He had Cade in hell. He dominated that matchup. He outplayed Cade. And I know, like, they're not playing the same role offensively, right? So it's a little bit difficult to just say he outplayed him. But in the sense of who got the better of that matchup on this night, yeah, I thought OG definitely got the best of him, and I think OG took it personally. I think he's taken it personally that, look, the Pistons we know have been chirping all week leading up to this game about how tough they are. We know the national media has been talking about how tough they are and how the Knicks aren't tough and, Detroit strong and fucking lunch pails and hard hats and all this bullshit. And the other thing I think he's definitely cognizant of is a lot of the talk about how, hey, when OG defended Cade in the regular season, Cade still cooked him. I think he took that personally. I think it's, the Jordan thing, right? And I took that personally. But like, I really do. I do think he took that personally. And I thought he played hard. Like he was definitely into the game right from the jump. So he deserves a lot of credit. I thought Cat, you mentioned it. I thought he played, I mean, would you say, I think that's probably at minimum like a top 5 defensive game he's played for the Knicks. That might be the best I think I've seen him defensively.
Low bar,
for the Knicks.
but
yeah. I mean, generally speaking, we know he's not the greatest defensive
but
player.
You get that out of him, you live with him every day. And
yeah,
I will add on OG, like he was very effective in the first half with Brunson sputtering it a little bit. He had 7 stocks, offense. By the way. I didn't realize that. He had 5 steals.
But he buoyed their offense in the first half when Brunson was not like there really. And then, I thought like Deuce had a terrible offensive game. I thought his defense when he came in was really good. I thought Campaign's defense was really good.
Game high plus 23 Campaign, by the way.
I thought, and we'll talk about Campaign more, but like I thought his defense, forgetting the offense, which we know was really good, especially in the fourth quarter. I thought his defense when he came in the first half was really good. I thought both those guys were really good. I thought Mitchell Robinson was fantastic. I thought he was fantastic in this game. I can't say enough about how good he looked. He probably could have played more minutes. And I suspect that if Tibbs's dice roll, which we will definitely talk about, of playing Campaign and Brunson together in the fourth quarter didn't work as well as it did, I think Mitchell Robinson would have played a lot in the fourth quarter. But I thought Mitchell Robinson in that first half was, you could argue he was the best player on the floor when he was on the minute. Like he was tremendous. That steal he had right before the end at the end of the first half, that's a special play. That's a special play.
It's not just size either, right? It was his awareness.
No, he understood it. He knew, he read the play. He knew he knew where that pass. He baited the pass, right? That's what it was. It was like a cornerback when they it's like Will Johnson. It's like Will Johnson baiting a pick 6 against USC. No, but it really is, right? He was baiting the pass. He knew that pass was like, that's the pass. That was the release valve. and he kind of stayed away enough. But then he's like, by the way, I have a crazy wingspan. I'm just kidding. Like, and that, that set up that OG pull up three. And it gave the Knicks, or it helped give the Knicks the lead at halftime. But yeah, I thought Mitchell Robinson was great. And I gotta say, I know that the ultimate plus minus of the Mitchell Robinson Cat lineup together wasn't great. I thought on another night, in another game where maybe they make a couple more shots and the other team makes a little less, like they make a couple less, which I thought were like contested or tougher shots, that looks a lot better. And I was very, very encouraged by what I saw from both of them together again. So I thought there were a lot of positives to take out of this game for the Knicks, even though like they kind of had to get it out of the mud in the fourth quarter. But like if I was just judging it based on kind of process and how it looked and how it felt, I thought there was a lot more to be encouraged by than there was discouraged. And that actually was kind of the reason why I was so frustrated when they were down 8 to start the fourth quarter. Cause I was like, when they were up 2 at the end of the first half, I was like, it feels like this should be a 15-point game. Like this feels like it should be a 15-point game. Cade's done nothing. I think Cade had 4 points or something in the first half. But it just felt like the Knicks were outclassing them and they just couldn't get the separation because of, timely shots or stupid turnovers or, Brunson trying to foul bait. And, I thought Brunson played a terrible first half. But like, this is where that talent advantage comes into play, right? Where it's like, when you have that talent advantage, you can turn it around like that in a quarter. And, obviously, look, Tibbs makes a really big call. And as no matter how you feel about Campaign, I don't think anybody thinks Campaign's one of the Knicks' 5 best players. But, we've been really critical of Tibbs at times for not using the lineups that are the best, not maximizing this, not riding the hot hand. I can only say, and I tweeted this in the middle of that fourth quarter, like, you have to give him a fucking ton of credit. You got to give him a ton of credit for rolling with that lineup and rolling the dice. And he took the shot and he hit, you know what I mean? Like he hit big on that. He deserves a ton of credit. Obviously the players, like Campaign specifically, deserve a ton of credit, but Tibbs deserves a ton of credit for what I thought was a great game plan coming into the game defensively. Getting his team to execute it, which we know has not been they've struggled all year executing consistently, especially on the defensive end. And look, there's stuff that I wish always that there would be more of, like pick and pops for Cat, more threes in general, blah, blah, blah. But if you're talking about the aggregate of what was done over 48 minutes, I think you have to come away and say Tom Thibodeau coached a great game.
Yeah, I mean, I think the word.
And I guess, sorry, one thing I will say. One decision I absolutely despise that he made. Bringing Landry Shamet in as the first sub off the bench when Josh Hart got into foul trouble to start the game. I thought that was a weird decision, made no sense, and it did not end up helping them at all. I kind of understand what he's going for, but that felt very much like I got my ruler out and I discovered that Landry Shamet is taller than Campaign and Deuce McBride, so he had to come in for those minutes.
Yeah, I mean, Payne and Brunson together is just, it's a very, and you see why, right? I mean, Payne is a more slight guy. Shamet's been playing well of late. Obviously didn't have a very good game on Saturday. At Bickerstaff targeted him. Let's just
you're right.
Lay the cards on the table there that they were running him through a lot of screens. The Knicks communication wasn't great. But
you got to know when to hold your cards and when to fold them.
Yeah, know when to leave Ricks. But in terms of the game he coached, I thought that, I mean, there were defensive adjustments. I've been saying this a lot. It does feel a lot like that Atlanta Knicks series from 2021. The Pistons remind me of that Knicks team a little bit. I think Cade is better than Randall, and I think he has a brighter future. But this is still a team that relies very heavily on one creator to be great, without really the ideal offensive pieces around him. So you can kind of exploit that, and it's in a way that doesn't always show up in the regular season, right? there's better scouting. More calls get let go. And we saw that with that Knicks Hawks series, right? You rely so much on Randall when the other team, especially, really Randall's kind of Achilles heel has always been when the team has a great rim protector and they can throw wings at you. Even when you beat your guy, there's someone waiting there, and that was tough for him. And to your point, I thought that made a huge difference when Mitchell Robinson was in there.
Oh yeah, yeah. There was one play that really stood out to me was in the third quarter. Cade, OG went for a steal, he didn't get it, so Cade basically had a free 2-on-1 with Stewart was the big on the opposite side of the lane, and Mitchell Robinson has to defend 2-on-1, and you could tell he wanted to throw the lob so badly, but Mitch did a really good job of kind of like making him guess what he was going to do, and then he kind of took away the lob at the last second. So Cade had to adjust, take a floater. He missed it, and then Mitchell got the rebound. But like, I thought that was a great example of the difference between Cat and Mitch, right? Because if that's Cat in that position, even if Cat plays it the exact same way, Cade is not going to have any. He's probably not even looking for the lob. He's just like, I'm going to go right at the rim and finish it at the rim. Like, Cat's not going to stop me. And that's like a great microcosm of kind of the difference and yeah, the very specific difference that Mitchell gives you over Cat.
Yeah, and so you have and I look, I don't want to be too harsh on Cade. Most players,
but I'm going to save it for the end of the series.
Most players, I think he's what, 23, 24 in his
27 in my books.
Yeah, he's 23 in his first playoff series. So comparing him to Randall with like a strong caveat, and for what it's worth, I thought
Randall's what, 25?
His first playoffs?
Yeah, he was 25, right? That was with the Knicks.
I think he was a little bit older.
I think he was 25. 25 or 26, guaranteed.
He's 30 now. So in 2021, he would have been, about 26. Yeah. But considering that, like, I mean, look, 21 on 21 shots we would have taken that with 12 assists from Randall any day of the week. So, but I think he was adjusting. You could see, right? There were several times where he gets a look. He got blocked from behind a few times. The playoffs are more intense, right? What's going to fly in the regular season where you got a layup is not always going to happen. The defense is going to make that extra effort. You're going to be better scouted. And
to the point you're talking about in terms of like the intensity, like, look, I know people. Okay, we can talk about Mikal. I actually think the conversation about Mikal after this game is very weird, but like the intensity that OG played with, I'm sorry, like he never played at that level of intensity in any of the fucking regular season games that he played against Cade.
Yeah, and it's not just one player; it's all of them, right? Cat, much more intense. Payne, right? It's different.
Josh Hart. Did Josh Hart have any like severe mental fuck ups in this game defensively that you remember? Because I don't. And like I know it's kind of like to your point, a low bar, but like really like that matters, right? All of that stuff builds up and incrementally like makes the collective greater.
Yeah, and we saw that against it's Atlanta. The things that the Knicks were able to pick on that year with Atlanta, it's like, oh well, they do have all these 6'7" wings, right? When these guys are locked in every position, they are going to make you work. And I think that he had to adjust a little bit to that. I thought his decision making was good, but sometimes it was a little bit slower, or sometimes it's, well, I have to make this decision on this pass with somebody swiping and another person rotating, and just that extra half second changes everything. So I think he's fine long term, but you see that and you see the ability to kind of navigate that not as well as a guy like Brunson, and we can talk about him too. I don't think Cade was as bad as the last time I saw a quarterback of an offense named Cade from the state of Michigan play in a playoff game. But I think that I think that
how many people do you think listening to this even understand what you're talking about?
I think Constantine definitely does. So I
think it's like Khan and like Ariel, and that's about it, maybe.
Maybe Kurt. Kurt should remember that.
Yeah, Kurt will definitely remember that. He probably jerks off to that.
But you saw it with the difference between him and Brunson was Brunson also made some poor decisions But it is kind of wild, right? This was a bad Brunson game, quote unquote. He finished with 34, 54 true shooting, 8 assists to 1 turnover. And to be clear, I completely agree with your assessment. He was awful for large swaths of this game. But
what did he have? What did he end up taking? 24 shots, 26 shots?
27, yeah.
27, okay.
He got to the line 10 times, as I'm sure a lot of Sixers fans will be kind enough to remind you of. But you could
half
see
of a normal Embiid night.
You could just see the difference where a guy's in his first playoff game, very talented, and I'm sure he'll bounce back, versus a guy who's been here, seen everything, and ultimately just the other team just doesn't. I don't think there are many teams that have enough to really to stop Brunson. There's going to be a bunch of 30-point games. There will be against Boston, and it just feels like, like that Hawks series, right? The Knicks had played hard every night, really had a tough identity. Everyone described them as a pain in the ass to play against. That's exactly the words you'd use for Detroit. That's still the words you'd use. They played really hard. They made it tough on the Knicks. But then you take a step back and you're like, but look at these two teams. Look at the personnel. There's Cade, and then a bunch of role players who do their job, know their roles well. But then you have a Knicks team that's been building for years with multiple all-stars, with a bunch of different guys to throw at Cade, with some versatility that they tapped into. But yeah.
And that, look, like, to the point you're talking about, in terms of experience, like, having a week to game plan is a huge difference between, and not just a week to game plan, right? A week to game plan, and to understand you're only going to be playing this team for the next minimum of 4 games, right? Hopefully it's only 4 games, but whatever, 5, 6, 7, however many games it is, you're only playing this team. So your focus is undivided. And to the point you're making about Brunson versus Cade, what I would say is what you saw was, when you have that experience, right? Brunson's obviously played now many playoff games, many playoff series. He's been in the NBA for what now? 7 years, I believe, 8 years, whatever the hell it is. Like, when you have that built up experience, regular season, postseason, and not just regular season, postseason, but having been the guy in the postseason now for 3 postseasons in a row, where the entire game plan, that defenses are making their point of emphasis to take you out. How do you handle all that? How do you handle X coverage? How do you handle Y coverage? That doesn't mean you're always going to be great. Like, I thought Brunson got into a really bad kind of mental state in the first part of this game where, look, was he fouled a couple times early in this game that they didn't call? Yeah, I think he was. You can't make it your point then to spend the rest of the half trying to, like, make arrears, right? Like, you can't be like, well, you missed that call, so I'm going to make sure you make this one. It's like, look, man, you have a step on shooter. Why don't you just try to make the shot instead of stepping back into his path and then trying to, like, hit an off balance weirdo, like, floater thing? Like, of course you're capable of that, but just make the shot. Just make the shot. Like, focus on making the shot, and the rest of it's going to come to you. It's going to happen. And I think one big difference you saw between him and Cade is Cade was terrible throughout this game. I don't care what the final numbers say. They looked a lot better than I think they really were at any point, or how they felt anyway. And to be fair, I think Brunson's numbers look a little bit better than not a little bit, but quite a bit better than I think they felt in the moment. But I think the difference you saw was, one guy has dealt with like having a bad half in the postseason, having a bad 3 quarters in the postseason, and then understanding, like, none of that matters. I know what they're going to do. I understand how they're going to defend me. And now it's incumbent upon me as a star player to read that stuff and make the right plays, and make it happen, and have that mental fortitude, and not just mental fortitude. Because I don't think Cade's struggles had anything to do with, like, his unwillingness or like, it to me, it's not like he was, like, turning into a coward in the moment, right? He wasn't shirking responsibility or anything. But when I say mental fortitude, I mean the understanding of, like, you can suck for 3 quarters. You close out the game in the 4th. Nobody cares. That's all that matters, right? Closing out that game in the 4th is all that matters. And I thought Brunson did a great job of that. I thought he did a lot better job. Like I thought in the first 3 quarters, even in the third quarter, he started getting hot, right? He started making shots. I think he was like 5 of 7 or 6 of 8 or whatever the hell he was from the field in that quarter. But the Knicks lost ground in that quarter, and it felt like he was pressing a little bit. He was holding the ball. He was dribbling the air out of it. He wasn't getting guys involved, and he was kind of still like searching for his game. And I thought in the fourth quarter, and this has a lot to do with Cam Payne, who deserves, again, a ton of credit. We will talk about him. But like allowing the game to come to him, allowing others to cook more or less, but like letting other guys get on the ball, get opportunities, and then playing off of that. And even when he was on the ball, it was like playing off of others, calling the right plays, bringing Towns into the set. Like I thought one of the best plays he had was when the Pistons go small. He brings Towns into the he calls Towns for a screen. He feeds Towns on the short roll, and then Towns feeds Hart for a layup right underneath the hoop, where Hart cuts from the dunker spot to the other side of the rim. I thought that was a really smart play by Brunson, and obviously Cat is the guy that makes the play ultimately. But like that's the type of kind of floor generalship that I think only comes with time. Like you only get that from experience, and you only get that from experience because it takes time to trust other guys. Like when you're a great player, the easiest thing to do sometimes is be like, I can make the play. I can do it. Like I can do it, and I can either create for myself or I can create for others. The hardest thing sometimes is like, I can create this opening for you, and then I trust you to make the play. And obviously the fact that the Knicks have a talented player like Cat and talented players like OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges and Josh Hart and whatever, like that makes it easier. But I thought you kind of saw him lean into that trust more in the fourth quarter and also get away from like, oh, I'm going to try and draw a foul or, I need to get an and one here or whatever. It's like, no, just get in front of your man and then make the shot. Like he was just keeping it simple. And then also what I will say is I thought defensively at periods in the first and second, like the first 3 quarters, he was poor in ways that are like, you always expect Brunson to give up a bit defensively, right? Because of just his physical limitations. But I just thought he took poor angles, made poor closeouts, maybe didn't make the right rotation at times. I thought in the fourth quarter, he really cleaned all that up. I thought he was really good defensively in the fourth quarter. So, you compare that to Cade, who I think was quite honestly a complete mess for the entire game, but especially in the fourth quarter. I don't know how many turnovers he had in the fourth quarter, but it felt like he had a turnover every other fucking possession. It felt like he could never get a clean hold of the ball. So yeah, I mean, to the point you're making, like, yeah, I think you could see the difference, and you could not just see it, but feel the difference between a guy who's been there, been through the battles, experienced struggles, right? We're talking about Jalen Brunson. This is a guy who got benched in a series against the Clippers when he was with the Mavericks, got benched, like didn't play. And when you go through that stuff and you come out the other end, and obviously you've come out much better for it as a superstar player at this point, those are experiences that I think can help you stay level-headed in the moment and get back to center and be like, okay, no. It doesn't matter that I fucked up the first half. It doesn't matter that the third quarter I wasn't getting my guys involved. What matters is I can still make these plays right now, and I can still exist and help turn this game around and ultimately help bring this victory home. Whereas I thought with Cade, I thought there was a little bit of like, it's his first playoff game. And this is a big moment for him. People can say whatever they want, right? You play your first playoff series. You're at the Garden. You're against the Knicks. You're on national TV. This is the biggest spot you've been in your professional career. This is the stage, right? I mean, we saw the week leading up to this, right? Cade had how many fucking national interviews? He had like 2 or 3 national interviews. Like this was clearly a big stage for him. And I think you could feel like he felt like he needed to make the play. He had to be the guy. He had to like force the action. And I think you felt that in that fourth quarter, the difference between these two guys, where it's like one guy's like, I've been here. This game isn't going to necessarily make or break my career, but it's a big game for my team. Whereas the other guy, I mean, not to say that Cade was like just gunning for himself and didn't understand the stakes for his team. But I think you can get caught up in that a little bit, right? As a young guy trying to establish yourself. And I thought that came through in that fourth quarter. I really thought Cade was like pressing at times that maybe he didn't need to. And again, I think Tom Thibodeau deserves a ton of credit because I think that's what he's banking on. I think he's like, one, I don't think they can make plays outside of Cade on the ball, which I believe is an accurate assessment. And two, I think he's kind of banking on like, this guy's going to want to make plays. Like he wants to make plays. He wants to force the action because this is his series. This is his team. They're going to ride or die with him type of thing. And that's fine if they're going to ride or die with him, but I'm going to make sure they're 6 feet under.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just having been in those situations, knowing what's going to happen. But it wasn't just Cade, right? I mean, they had a 5-second violation to start. They had a shot clock violation.
Have you ever seen that before? To start a quarter?
No, and to your point, I think campaign was a big part of it. But the other team levels up to an intensity that really the Knicks hadn't showed against the Pistons all year. And you haven't seen that change before. You haven't seen that kind of the playoffs is all about these shifts. They happen multiple times in a game. And you get kind of caught in uncharted territory. And it's all uncharted territory for Cade at this point, and it's not for Brunson. That's kind of the difference at this point.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely correct. And, we've talked a lot about Cade, and we've talked a bit about Brunson. I
do think even with all the experience, though, coming into the series, people saying, "Well, Cade's a better defender. He's the best player in the series." I think Game 1 was maybe not, if not an emphatic kind of rebuttal to that. Pretty convincing. The Knicks have the best player in the series. They might have the best too. So
yeah, and I know there'll always be conversation of like, well, look at what Brunson has around him, and look like, OG had this great first half, and Cat did. I mean, I thought Cat played a fantastic game just from like the jump. But, if you were just to compare either guy's performance, I mean, people will talk about like, oh, Cade's a better defender. Okay, Cade's a better defender. What exactly did Cade do in this game defensively that was like amazing? Like if you're gonna say he's a better defender, which I do believe he's a better defender than Brunson, not a hot take, but like, is he a meaningful defender? Like, is he moving the needle defensively? Because to me, like when you're talking about that kind of stuff, right, where you're trying to differentiate between elite creators and you're saying, well, this guy's a better defender. It's like, okay, if that's the case, like your defense has to be at a level that actually moves the needle and isn't just like, oh, this guy is a good cog. Because to me, I watch Cade and I'm like, he's not a bad defender. It's less easy to exploit him potentially than there are ways to exploit Brunson. But I don't think he moves the needle defensively. I don't think there's like he's a huge positive on that end. This is not Kawhi Leonard. This is not SGA. This is not like a player that is a massive net positive defensively that is unlocking all different types of things you can do on that end. Like, yeah, I guess you can switch more with Cade, but I didn't really feel much impact from him defensively, and I really never have. And again, like my point isn't to shit on the guy and say he's a terrible defender or something. I just don't think the difference between him and Brunson is meaningful to the level, or is the difference between them defensively is meaningful enough to the level that like their offensive gap doesn't matter more. You're on mute, Stacy.
And we have to be clear, there's a pretty significant offensive gap between them. And it shows up more in the playoffs. That's just how it is right now. Cade is still, I see Cade. I think one day this guy is going to be a guy who can pull up from deep off the dribble at much higher volume than he does. Quicker process decision maker. Kind of more aggressive, exploiting mismatches maybe, or seeking them out. Even things like in the post. And he's still putting that together as much as he made huge strides this year. And and he is their best player. I mean, go down from that. You cut off the head of the snake. Um, Everything kind of is tougher for them, right? You're relying on the Tobias Harrises of the world, the Tim Hardaway Juniors, and it was annoying when that happened for a bit, for a lot of the game. But ultimately, and they, Cade was, I think, their highest plus minus, and he was like +8, +6. When he left, they really struggled to generate offense. I thought Schroeder played a pretty good game. Um, Again, this is the kind of thing you're talking about, right? All right, like it's like the Knicks saying, "Well, Randall didn't have a great game, but we got a good performance from Derrick Rose." That's not enough. Not in the playoffs. So this is, the Knicks would really have to
There
play
are
a poor
very
series to
few.
lose. Yeah,
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but there's like very few great primary superstars who can have a poor efficiency, scoring, creating game, assist turnover game, um, and truly be like net positive guys. Like honestly, to some degree, I almost think like the list starts and ends with Steph Curry. Not to say that he's the greatest player ever, but it's more like Steph is just like one of the few guys who you're like, he had 6 points, but they were plus 38 in his minutes. And that makes sense because the defense was so focused on him the entire time it didn't matter.
yeah. It's like a wide receiver who gets 2 catches for 50 yards, but if he's being doubled all game and they run for 150 and another guy has 100 because he's in single coverage, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, look, I do want to talk about Cat. I thought Cat was really, really impressive. I thought he was really under control. I thought this was a game where it would be easy for him to kind of like maybe feel like he needed to force the issue, right? There was a lot of talk about Cat Soft and Isaiah Stewart and Duran. These guys are gonna like they can throw bodies at him and blah blah blah. And in terms of like concerns I had coming to the series, um, the idea of like, well, if they put a center on Hart, defense, Hart with the center, and then put a wing on Cat, and they can kind of show help, and how does he react to that stuff? We know, based on his history, that Cat's obviously historically been a playoff dropper in terms of scoring efficiency, yes, but also his assist turnover ratio has not been great in the playoffs, and that's kind of the thing that was concerning me more than anything, or was more worrisome to me, I guess, more than anything coming into this game. But to that extent, I thought he handled the pressure well. I thought he didn't force a lot, and I thought even the shot, like he made a couple of crazy runners that were not great shots. I didn't think those were shots that he was forcing. I thought those were shots that almost he had to take because of just the situation he was put into when he got the ball. So I thought he played a really good game offensively. Some of his passing was great. We know that sometimes he likes to hit home run passes that maybe aren't the smartest play in the world. But he didn't force that. He didn't force that stuff. And I liked seeing him mix it up a little bit physically on defense, especially. But like I don't know if I'm sure you caught it, but like when he ties up Cade on the ground and then he just kind of like holds it, and then Isaiah Stewart comes over and starts doing his like you want to start some shit thing, and he Cat's just like, no, I don't actually. I just want to just wanted to hold the ball, and that was all I wanted to do, and just kind of gets up, starts clapping. But he was chirping, he's chirping at the bench at their bench the whole game. I don't know. I just was really, really impressed by his performance, and I thought the way he carried himself in his debut playoff game at the Garden was really impressive, and I think he deserves a ton of credit for it. Especially because defensively he was. I don't want to say he was good, or okay, or I thought he was a significant plus on the defensive end of the floor in this game.
I think that's overstating it. He got taken advantage of sometimes, but he was definitely more active. You'll take that from him, like I said before. He had some tough shots. He also, I think, he had some tough shots. The one time he kind of forced a little bit in the post against Stewart, he got a foul call. I do think, I don't think this is why the Knicks won. I thought they got a reasonably favorable whistle. We'll see what happens when they go back to Detroit. Or if that lasts.
Why do you say that though? Because I think you look at the game in totality. The Knicks had less
Yeah,
free throws,
that's
same foul
but
calls.
yeah, I don't usually I don't often buy that. I thought, Detroit went to the paint quite a bit. And they're a physical team, and I think Brunson got to the line 10 times. There's probably some where Detroit felt he shouldn't go there. For what it's worth, Bickerstaff didn't complain. Like I said, I don't think this was a poorly officiated game.
I was
Um,
pretty surprised by that. His comments after the game were actually like the least Bickerstaff ever.
yeah, I mean he was annoying as hell in that Cleveland series. But they're a physical team, and they might get away with more at home. Um, and how will the Knicks respond to that? I don't know. Because it's not just the free throws, right? They're calling a lot of off-ball stuff. On the flip side, you can argue Dennis Schroeder wasn't getting called for illegal screens, which he does constantly. Um, but Detroit wants a more physical game. I thought the refs, got involved some, and the fact is, to guard the Knicks, Detroit does have to foul. They're not, there are some matchups the Knicks are just going to be able to exploit. But for Towns, I mean, you're going to take this. I think Khan had a stat where it was like the players to go in a playoff game 20, 10, and 5 with 5+ stocks is in the Eastern Conference. So you're getting into the Tommy Beer territory with some of the stats. But literally, it's just Cat and LeBron, which is a pretty good list to be on.
And the difference is, Cat's obviously a better 3-point shooter, therefore he's a better player than LeBron.
That's right. But for his playoff debut, there wasn't much more you could have asked. I think this is what the team was trying to build after what you saw last year, when Brunson had it. I mean, Brunson struggles for 3 quarters most of the time before this. That's a loss. When Randall was the second option in the playoffs, we saw that they were very dependent on Brunson. Last year, when everyone fell apart, really, Devo had a couple huge games, but when that wasn't happening, they really struggled. They needed Brunson to score 40 points. But you see, not just Cat, but OG. Mikal Bridges had a quiet game, but we know he's capable of more. Hart, Payne. There were so many different players for the Pistons to account for. And better teams are going to be able to match that in other ways or put more pressure on the Knicks defense. But when shaping and kind of pivoting with this team, they have been successful in creating a more balance overall, and more kind of mitigating the risk of teams keying in on Brunson. And I think Cat was the biggest part of that.
Yeah, he was great. And again, like, I hate to bring this up because I do think Tibbs coached a pretty good game here. But even with what we're talking about, and in terms of what you're talking about, in terms of like, this is why you get Cat, right? This is kind of the construct you're trying to build. You still didn't get much 5-out, like actual 5-out in this game. I know, like, Josh Hart's a weird one to figure out. What is he, like 4.5 out or whatever? But it's not true 5-out. And when they did go 5-out, it was like that Shamit lineup in the first quarter, which is not the kind of lineup I think that we want when we're talking about the 5-out. Look, ultimately, I guess where I came out from this game, and just in general how I've kind of felt leading into this series and kind of trying to make sense of everything we've saw this year and how Tibbs utilized roster, is if you want to play Hart, that's fine. Hart's great. Hart had a really good game. I thought his second half was really good. Even in the first half, he's really good. He's got in foul trouble. But the idea to me is, like, if Hart isn't playing well and that lineup is struggling, and we're talking about the starting 5, right? If that lineup is, at the end of games is not kind of where you want it to be, and they're not getting easy shots and teams are able to lock them up kind of defensively or whatever the hell it is, to me, there are 2 options you have that really make sense in general. Look, again, deserves a ton of credit for campaign. I promise you, after we talk about this, we're going to talk about campaign. But like, in general, what you're talking about is you can go 5-out, right, with Deuce as the 2 guard. By the way, Steph just made a fucking insane 3. I don't know if you're watching this, but you can either go 5-out, right, with kind of Deuce coming in for Hart, or you can go big with Mitchell Robinson, which is what he did to close the first half, and I actually was fine with that. I love that lineup, man. I think it's really good, and I think it gives you advantages. But you have three different kind of lineups that I think all make sense as your closing five potentially. It's up to him to kind of figure out when to push the right buttons. But in the in the vein of pushing the right buttons, again, I think you have to give Tibbs a ton of credit for rolling the dice here. Not an easy call to be like, you know what? Campaign's playing really well. I'm going to leave him in. And I'm going to put Brunson back on the floor for Deuce. And we're going to go Deuce, right? We're going to go Deuce, Campaign, OG, Hart, Cat. And that lineup, I mean, turned the game. It won the game. It won the game for the Knicks. Their ball pressure was great. And I think you saw the value of having another ball handler, right, on the floor with Brunson, where it was a little easier for him to get open. And he didn't need to control the ball all the time. And another guy could have run a pick and roll and get to the rim and finish. I think you saw the value of those things. So maybe there's a fourth option now that you can close with. Whatever the case is, I guess going back to the original point here that you were talking about, I still don't think we're getting the full breadth of what Cat can provide. But forgetting that, I think your point still holds weight of like, this is why you get Cat, right? Like, because even if Brunson doesn't have it going, there's another guy that can kind of like help carry things over and give him a greater, I guess, margin for error. Like he has a greater margin for error now than he did previously. And I guess, you can argue that in the past that should have been Randall, and whatever, we don't need to get into whatever were the reasons for Randall's struggles in the playoffs in New York. But they were his struggles. And that's what happened. Cat, so far, at least in this one game that we saw, gave you something that I don't think Randall has really ever given you on either end of the floor, right? Because Randall could never play the five. Whether me and you can disagree on how good Cat was on defense, but I think it's safe to say we would agree that like you couldn't have Randall play the five in the way that Cat has played the five all year and how he played the five in this game.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, like you're always taking a big hit there. You're losing more on the glass. That's probably been one of the more understated things. Cat has done a pretty good job in the defensive glass at the five. And you're not getting the benefit on offense, right? Should Cat have taken more threes? Yeah, I think a big adjustment that I did like is he started to take. He only took three. I think they were all most of them came. Most of them. He had a deep logo shot he missed, but it led to a putback. He had another big three off of kind of hot streak he was on. So he adapts and he can just do more. So I mean, there isn't really much of a question there. And when it comes to things like double teams and seeing the floor, he's not going to pass out of drives, which is the trade-off. But he sees the floor better from the post. He's better at navigating doubles. So it's not and I think that when there's a big helping, right, he's much better at managing that, right? Keeping the big at bay. You come, I'm gonna hit the dunker. He has that fade away. He can get it off over length. I think that's something Randall really struggled with, right? Especially when you talk about Bam Adebayo, Jared Allen, Evan Mobley. Those are the guys we've really seen Randall. And I know he was injured, but we've really seen him struggle.
Even Capella.
Yeah, definitely Capella. We've seen him struggle, and then and then you have those wings like Hunter who could get under him a little bit, and he doesn't get close enough, and he's not the shooter Cat is even from mid range. It's a world of a difference, right? It doesn't always show up in the counting stats.
DeAndre Hunter, special player.
No, but I mean, you saw the wings that Atlanta threw at him, right? So one, he has to worry about Capella if he can get all the way to the rim, but he's not like Cat where he's 6'10" and he can shoot over anybody, right? He is a really good mid-range shooter, but you can see those differences that I think show up more in the playoffs than they might in just regular season counting stats, where Randall was always very productive and not too far from what Cat did.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And even just like the fact that Cat, if he just stands 4 feet behind the arc at the top of the key, like that has a gravity and opens up things in a way that like Randall can never do. And it keeps the defense engaged in a way like if Randall stands 4 feet behind the arc, you're just like, okay, cool, like great, like we're taking the possession off here. Cat's a different guy, and honestly, like sometimes I think both of us wish that he would stand more often 4 feet behind the line. We're like, dude, stand 4 feet stand 4 feet behind the line way more often than you do. That would be great. Campaign. All right, let's get to it. This guy, you can argue won us the game, or was at least the biggest X factor in winning us the game. I mean, what did you think of his performance? Because I actually thought him and Deuce got taken out, I want to say with like 7 minutes left in the first half to put back in Brunson and McCall. I understand why he did that. I don't have a problem with that choice. I think he thought that was an opportunity to blow the game open. With the double bigs, OG, McCall, Brunson. There are a lot of reasons why that didn't occur. I actually do not think most of them had to do with McCall. I thought most of that had to do with Brunson playing a very weird first half in terms of his process, which we've already talked about, and kind of some of his, I don't want to say, yeah, I mean, I will say just like kind of just ball hoggery a bit in the first half, like a little bit searching for his own offense, and not necessarily searching for it in the wisest ways. But I thought he played really well in the first half when he came in. And honestly, the Knicks, I think, pushed the lead. They were down 2, I think, at one point, and they pushed the lead up to 4 or 5, maybe even when Brunson and McCall came back in. But I thought he played a really good half in the first half and maybe deserved, I think not maybe deserved to play a little bit more. But I thought again in the second half, he came in, he showed exactly, he had it yesterday. He just had it going yesterday. And he's kind of one of those players, right? Like when he has it going, he just adds juice, and that's a guy that you almost have to like ride the hot hand with. And again, credit to Tibbs, he did ride the hot hand. But I guess what were your takeaways from his performance? And more importantly, like, do you think there is anything to be gained? Maybe not in terms of like what is capable for this team ceiling this year, but maybe that informs the type of skill sets maybe you're looking to add on to this core as we move forward after the season is over.
Campaign is the word I used on the post game. He is predictably unpredictable. So what I'll say is that the guy he's predictable in the sense you know what he's going to do, and the things that he did yesterday, there wasn't like an out of body experience, right? You know he's going to jack up threes. You know he can get to the rim. I thought he did a better job getting to the rim and getting some layups at a time when the Knicks were struggling on offense, like real layups, not those kind of floaters. But he was going to get you those. Probably is going to move the ball too much, can be exploited on defense, but is going to compete. And when the shots are falling, it's really a huge boost to your bench. Gives you a little bit more length than this typical guard, right? So there's matchups from there that comes in. In terms of how much I take away as like, one, he's a veteran, so he's been through these situations before. He's capable of getting hot and very impactful when he does because of his style of play. And he's going to be comfortable playing his role. He's not going to be sped up. He's not going to, make a big scene if he's not making minutes. And he's not, his offense and defense kind of like, he's always going to play the same way, which is high variance, but you know what you're going to get. Which I think is important on a team where, you have these superstars that are going to be the key. They say role player. That comes from the fact that, like, it's not like every game your task is going to be very different. These guys, the stars are the ones who are going to dictate what happens. But you have to be willing to do your job. And I think that's who you've seen from Campaign really all season. In terms of shaping the roster, yeah, I mean, the Knicks clearly would like another bench creator. Deuce hasn't quite ascended to that. A guy who can handle ball pressure, not turn it over, get you some buckets when you're resting your stars. they haven't, Bridges hasn't quite been that in the way that they might like from your third, fourth option on offense. Cat is, he's not a really top of the key creator. So having that kind of dynamic guard play is something you want. What I've always said though is, guys who we've talked about, Colin Sexton, for example, right? Usually the kind of guy who is a good enough bench creator to really move the needle is not going to be satisfied with 13 or 15 minutes behind Brunson, the way campaign is. Or if they're good enough where you can play them next to Brunson and get them to 25, 30 minutes, those guys tend to be very much in demand, right? We see this with Quickly. We saw this with Quickly, right? Like, it's not just that, you could still have used them. You could have used them at the 2. He is a player like that is going to be worth a lot more to another team. I'm not saying that player isn't out there and the Knicks shouldn't look for him. And if you could bring a guy like Colin Sexton here, I think this shows like what another creator could do for this roster.
We need to find our Derek White.
Yeah, but in some ways we've kind of gotten that by committee. And again, the other part of it, I'll push back on that a little bit. Derek White gets to play next to a star wing creator. It might be easier to find that guy.
You mean Jaylen Brown?
Yeah. I mean Cole Hauser. I mean Jalen Barrett.
By the way, Cole Hauser that's so funny you said Cole Hauser, because isn't that actually
Sam Hauser?
Isn't that the guy in Fast and Furious too?
No, I think he's the kid in Big Daddy and Sweet Life of Zach and Cody. I'm gonna look this up.
I think
you're right. Wow,
yeah.
You were right.
Yeah.
Why did I think of? Yeah, he's the villain.
And I'll take my cutter back.
Yeah, and he's also in Good Will Hunting. I always forget that. He's the kind of bully. So you see what that kind of player does for the Knicks, but it's tough to find that. The Derek White type player who can also shoot, that's really valuable, right? Usually it's either a Josh Hart variant where the spacing is a little iffy, and Derek White for some time was that before he came to Boston, or it's a guy who the defense is iffy, right? So would you like another creator? Yeah, absolutely. You can see what that does, but it is going to be a guy that comes with some limitations. For campaign, it's that he's in a great play. He just doesn't have gravity. I don't think he's a selfish player, not a good passer, but teams just aren't compounding on him, and he has some defensive limitations. But whoever gets in that role is going to have some warts. The ideal, I think they took a bet. They made a very calculated move with Deuce that it's like, we signed him for a contract he's absolutely worth. If he was to somehow add this, he becomes our Derek White. That doesn't look like it's in the cards right now. But that's how you find that player. I don't think it's going to be by finding a player or being able to trade for a player who's like that right now, because the assets it'll cost you probably could be invested elsewhere, and it will cost you a lot. So,
yeah, I think it's very hard to find the exact.
What did the Celtics even give up for Derek White?
They gave up a first-round pick and a 2028 top 1 protected pick swap.
Yeah, so I think it's going to be tough to find that kind of a deal there. And people didn't think Derek White was this when they made that deal, right? He was a good player. So you're going to need to find upside somewhere, either by spending for a guy with upside or on the roster itself. But sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I think it's worth noting, like, as great as Cam Payne played and as great as that lineup was, the ultimate goal isn't, and all due respect to them, but like the ultimate goal isn't to beat the Pistons, right? The ultimate goal is to beat a team like Boston. It's to beat a team like OKC, who, by the way, that game was something today. It's to beat a team like Cleveland. That's the ultimate goal, right? Is to find the guys that can matter in those contexts. I don't think Cam Payne is a guy that does, but I do think when you see kind of just the value of another guy that can run a pick and roll, get into the paint, get to the rim at times, finish, create, take a pull-up three, it gives you an idea of what it is you're looking for. you mentioned Colin Sexton. The reason why I don't think Colin Sexton is ultimately like the guy that you kind of want is the defensive frailties that I think will present themselves against those quality of teams. But the offensive skill set obviously is definitely very much the one that you're looking for. Now, who is that player? What is that player? Can we find that player? And does it need to be that, right? Do you have to have that archetype to ultimately win a championship with Brunson on your roster? I don't necessarily think so. Just like I don't fully believe that you need to have 3 wings around Brunson and Cat to make it all work. Like I think you can have a true 4 potentially be in that lineup or whatever. Like I think there are different ways to look at this stuff. And I think more than the player type and kind of what size they are and what they look like, just the skill set kind of thing is what is relevant to me. And we saw that quickly. I think we both agreed on this where it's like it wasn't frustrating to me that we didn't play quickly with Brunson more when he was here because we thought quickly and Brunson was like the championship backcourt that was that was not going to be the backcourt that led us to a championship. But it was more the idea of like, one, it's probably your best lineup right now, and two, it just gets Brunson off the ball, and we know how dynamic Brunson can be when he's off the ball, right? I mean, this is something that is kind of inherent in how Golden State plays, right? Where they're just like, we know what Steph can do on the ball, we know how great he is on the ball, but we also know what he can do when he's off the ball and when defenses still have to kind of put their focus on him and what that opens up for everybody else. And, that still requires you to have somebody on the ball that can leverage that at moments. And that's where I think Butler's addition has really helped them. But like, that's, how do the Knicks get that player? Do they have that player? I don't think they have that player. Like, I think for as great as Karl Anthony Towns is, you can't just give him the ball at the top of the key type of thing. And like, you're not running pick and rolls with Cat as the ball handler. It's not that type of situation. So, I think they need another guy that can handle the rock and let Brunson be leveraged off the ball. Getting that player type is so hard. And I'm not sure how they do it or who it would be. But, watching that fourth quarter, and it needs to be said, like, forgetting that stuff that like Campaign helped leverage offensively, his defense in this game was great. He was really, really good on defense in this game. He put pressure on the ball, like you talked about right at the start of that fourth quarter, right? He's the reason they draw that 5-second violation because he's just up there fucking pressuring the ball for absolutely no reason. And the Pistons are like, what the fuck is going on? Why is this guy jumping around like a maniac here? But he draws the 5-second violation. I thought he was getting into ball handlers really well. I thought Deuce did a really good job of that too off the bench, but Campaign, when he does it, it's more notable because that's not something you typically associate with him. And he just played with a lot of like verve and kind of like how do you pronounce it? Chutzpah? I don't know how you pronounce that word. But
Chutzpah.
Yeah, he played with a lot of je ne sais quoi, joie de vivre, to quote the French. But there was a lot of like
He has the
energy.
makings of a varsity athlete.
Yeah, but he just there was a lot of like just energy in his play that I thought helped and yeah, I don't know what else to really say. I just thought he was spectacular in this game. And forgetting the shots he did hit, because a lot of them, they were like, okay, he hits a catch and shoot 3. It's that fucking 3 hit to make it 103-98. When he shot that, I was like, this is the dumbest fucking great shot, buddy. Because it was like this step back where he had no space. You're like, don't. Oh, good job. Always believed in you, Cam. But yeah, he was great. And then look, I do want to talk. I think it's worth talking about Tibbs a little bit more because a lot of the decisions that he's made throughout the course of the year, we've been really critical of. I thought he coached a really fantastic game. Not perfect. I didn't like the Landry Shamet thing in the first quarter. I thought that was not the guy to bring in there. But I loved him going double big to close the half. Look, he had to make a decision, right? Because Hart had 3 fouls. I loved his decision to go double big to close the half. I loved his decision to go with Payne at the end of to close the game, more or less. I thought those were two really, really big calls that he nailed. And his defensive strategy on Cade, at least in game one, all you can say is that it worked. Deserves credit for that. We've always kind of gotten on him for, it's been weird all year how Mikal has just been the guy that guards the primary point of attack thing constantly, even when you're like, are we sure we want Mikal Bridges on Jason Tatum? Are we sure we want Mikal Bridges on this super quick point guard? Are we sure we want Mikal Bridges on this bigger wing, creator? Not great matchups for him. But he nailed that matchup, right? He put OG on him. And he played Cat more at the level. He played more aggressive coverages. Yeah, I think we'll see how the rest of the series goes, but I'm pretty sure, I don't know if me and you talked about this or if I talked about this with Prez, but I haven't really watched a series that we've had before with Tibbs as a coach and felt like this was like a defensive masterclass of scheme that he drew up. Even in that Cleveland series, I felt, and I don't remember what you picked going into that series, but for the most part, I think most Knicks fans were like, yeah, we're going to win this series. We feel really good about this matchup.
I think I was either 6 or 7, but I did think the Knicks were going to win. I think they said Knicks in 6.
But it felt like it was a good matchup for us, even though, that was not the consensus. And obviously this is a great, the books are saying this is a great matchup for us. But I feel really strongly that what I saw from him in game one, if you keep that same focus to scheme, to execution on the defensive end, and kind of just making it like Cade's not going to beat us, I feel really strongly about saying that's probably as close as he's come to a defensive masterclass kind of coaching clinic in his time in New York. Because I thought that Cleveland series that shit was like a rock fight, and it was just disgusting series.
Well, I mean, I think he did have a good defensive game plan.
Yeah, I don't know if I don't know if I'm explaining it right, but I think you understand what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, there was a little more nuance here. I think against Cleveland, it was make their wing beat you, right? Collapse on the drives.
Because the three couldn't shoot, right? It was like Okoro or fucking LeVert, and you're like, all right, buddy, have a fucking blast.
Yeah, and with LeVert, you give a token contest, and look, the one game where the Knicks lost, LeVert went off. Okoro had some moments, but that was a pretty straightforward. That's how you play that team. That's why the Strus move, Hunter, obviously, and others have changed that team, right? That was the clear chink in the armor. Against Detroit, it's a little bit, it's maybe you can say a little bit more nuanced, but I think that was a talented Cleveland team. We can say they were a good matchup for the Knicks, but Donovan Mitchell, very talented player, Garland, very talented. I think the pieces were a little bit easier. You had 2 elite rim protectors available. You had 17 minutes of an injured version of one of those, or a more limited version of one of those guys. Would I call this a defensive masterclass? I ultimately just don't think Detroit is that good of an offensive team. So I can't, and they scored 112 points. So I can't go that far. I think, again, just like saying ignore the wings and key in on.
Would you say this has the makings of a defensive masterclass?
Not sure I get the.
The makings of a varsity athlete.
The makings of. Yeah, maybe. But I just, I think there's just, we have a better team. Their best player can be matched. We have the best, probably one of the best 2 or 3 guys to match up with their best player from a size, physicality, technique standpoint. And we have other guys. So we didn't fuck up, but defensive masterclass against this team in the playoffs, I wouldn't go that far right now.
Maybe projecting a little forward, I kind of feel like this is my projection. This is just what I think is going to happen over the course of the series from what I saw in game one. I have a feeling we're going to see an increasingly strong vice grip defensively by the Knicks in this series because I don't really know. Like, look, we've talked a lot about the Knicks. If you're JB Bickerstaff, right? You watch the game one tape. What do you really think the Knicks can do, or sorry, that the Pistons can do offensively to, like, I guess, combat what the Knicks showed you? Because I think the only thing they really can do, and they did do it a few times, and it was successful at times, and other times the Knicks were able to snuff it out, was like, okay, well, we'll have fucking Malik Beasley screen for Cade, or we'll have, oh my God, Steph, or we'll have we'll have Tim Hardaway Jr. screen for him. So it's like, if you're going to show two, then there's an easy swing pass. But the Knicks were able to snuff that out more than not, especially in the second half. I don't really know what else they can truly do offensively in this series. Now, maybe defensively there are things they can do. I'm not certain about that, but I'm curious to get your thoughts of, like, again, obviously we're always going to look at it from the Knicks viewpoint, but I guess if you're kind of like trying to put yourself in Pistons fan shoes, JB Bickerstaff shoes, what would you look at in this game and be like, okay, well, these are things that we can now change and maybe get more juice out of this, or I can take this off. I mean, one thing I would do if I was JB Bickerstaff, I would never play Ron Howell again this series. I would not play him another fucking second. That was amazing. The three he took, as soon as he took that, I was like, get in rebound position, boys. Like, get in rebound position. And then the travel was so fucking obvious that was going to be a travel. But yeah, I am curious to get your thoughts on what you think if you're in the Pistons shoes and JB Bickerstaff, what would you look at and try and maybe get more out of?
Yeah, I thought Schroeder had some nice moments. It allows you to get Cade off ball at times. Some Schroeder Cade action and pick and roll. You're bringing OG to the action, but you're maybe forcing him now to defend a guard or help on a guard. Cade can flash. Maybe it's if they're going to put OG off ball on Cade. Try to, Schroeder can create a little bit. I think they did a good job of trying to hunt Cat, and there was some success there. I also think there's something to, I just think Isaiah Stewart, I actually think Duren does have a very good future. I just think he's being oversold right now as like a viable plus playoff big. But he was a game low -20. Isaiah Stewart was a +8, which I think he's the only Piston it was in positive figures. So
do you think that flatters him a little bit? Because I didn't. When I saw that, I was a little bit flummoxed. Maybe look, maybe it's doing. I'm not.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I thought, I don't think he caused a ton of problems, but I thought he was better on defense. Cat was getting his on anyone, but you can see that Stewart can force him out of his spots a little bit more. He's more switchable, right? He can than Duren on two right now, right? I think Duren has that potential in the future, and he can hit threes. So I would just play Stewart more. And this is also not just based on the game one. I just in general have thought he's one of their 3 or 4 best players, and he's better than Duren. I think going double big could be interesting as well. Tobias Harris had a great game, at least in the first half. So I get why you wouldn't do that. But one thing the Pistons might want to lean into more is they got 11 offensive rebounds to only 8 for the Knicks. So it's not like they were dominant there, but they have the ability to attack the glass. And especially if it's going to be Cat and OG there, make OG work a little bit, right? Especially you're gonna put OG on Cade. Well, now we have 2 bigs in. You're gonna have to ask Mikal Bridges or Hart to deal with Stewart on the glass, right, or Duren on the glass, which it's a way to muck things up. It hurts your spacing, but you're already playing Osar there. And it hurts you on defense because Osar is taking the major duty on Brunson. But there's that you can keep Osar in and then sub out uh, Stewart for Harris. Now that hurts your spacing a lot. Is that decrease in spacing worth the offensive rebound? I don't know, but that's a look I would go to. Try to really pound the glass, make the Knicks defend longer. You're also slowing down their ability to get into transition. That and I think what really killed Detroit was the turnovers. How do you reduce those? Having another ball handler there next to Cade and Schroeder could help. I imagine Schroeder is going to play a pretty important part in this series. I think that in terms of shot quality, it's going to be tough for Detroit. Won in many ways shot quality, right? They've got up more threes, but I think that'll be a tough way for them to win. I think where they thrive really is the possession battle. So you want to cut down those turnovers. That means sometimes putting another ball handler next to Cade, maybe a little bit more. And I would look at double big and try to crash the glass even more than they did.
Yeah, I mean, I think the issue with going double big is I almost want to say it plays into the Knicks' hands. Like, because if you go double big, the Knicks can feel very, very comfortable going to Mitch and Cat. And Mitch and Cat, to me, is better than any double big combination that Pistons can throw out there.
But we don't want to do that. We can't do that for a ton of minutes, right? So,
are you sure? Are you positive?
Yeah, this was. There's no way. What is it? A Buick Skylark made these marks. If Mitch can play 30 minutes, yeah, but it doesn't look like that's a thing. So you're gonna have.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I kind of think Tibbs is playing a little bit by ear here. I think he has that in his back pocket if he wants it. But I also think he knows he can't use it all the time, right? Like if you're gonna use Mitch for big minutes, you probably can't do it every game, right? It's got to be like a one-off type of thing. So it's important that the Knicks and Tibbs, for that matter, kind of manage that carefully. So to your point, I guess if the Pistons want to do that, go for it. I just don't know if that really gives them an offensive advantage because Cade's not a great enough creator, I think, to just get by with that. Like you really have to dominate the offensive glass if that's kind of your strategy. And I just don't know that they have that capability. And Cade, like he's not a particularly threatening pull-up 3-point shooter, right? He's a good mid-range pull-up guy. He's not a particularly threatening 3 guy. He's a movement 3-point guy. And, you can play Schroeder with Cade, but in a lot of ways that shrinks the floor even more, right? Because teams aren't going to honor Schroeder off the ball the way they respect, forget Malik Beasley, but even like Tim Hardaway Jr., right? Like you have to honor Tim Hardaway Jr. to a certain extent that you're never going to respect Dennis Schroeder as a spot-up guy off the ball. And then it's always like this push and pull of, well, we want to get Cade off the ball, right? We want to be able to leverage that, but does that actually, like, what's the cost benefit, right? That's always the kind of push and pull of those decisions for a coach. It's like, if I'm taking my best guy off the ball, it needs to be worth it. And I just don't know if putting the ball in Schroeder's hands is good enough in terms of.
I'm not even about putting it in his hands as much as having another creator there, because they had 19 turnovers, right? So,
well, they did play Schroeder with Cade quite a bit, even in the fourth quarter, and that was when they were their worst in terms of turnovers. I don't know. I don't know that they have a lot of offensive options here, aside from hoping that Cade figures it out. Which, look, like we've seen young players figure it out faster than we thought they might initially, right? Like we've seen guys figure it out after a couple of games or whatever, and it's just a lot faster than you think. We've also seen guys that need a series or two playoffs or whatever the hell it is before they get it done. But yeah, this is kind of like where it just exists. They have a lot of, to the point you made earlier about how this is very similar to the 2021 Knicks. What made that team really good in the regular season was they were very, very, they hustled their ass off, right? They played super hard. But at the end of the day, like, they had a lot of one-dimensional players, and one-dimensional players can get exposed in the playoffs in a way that when teams aren't scouting on you and you don't get to play a team every fucking night, it's a little bit different. I think the Pistons are very similar in that way. Like, if you want to get offense on the floor, okay, so you're going to put Malik Beasley next to Tim Hardaway Jr. at the 2 and the 3, but now your defense is a lot weaker, right? If you want to get more shooting on the floor and you want to spread it out, okay, then we're going to take Asar off and put Tobias Harris at the 4. Okay, but now your defense is a lot weaker. So you're always robbing Peter to pay Paul with what they have to manage. And they just don't have a lot of great two-way guys yet. Like, I think Asar is going to get there. I think me and you are both really high on Asar.
I think Duran's going to be really good one day. I'm not blowing him off.
Yeah. Like, I think those guys, they have guys that are going to get there, but in the current here and now of what they are today, again, to go back to the point, look, you actually were banging the drum on this more than anybody before the series, where you're like, look, Duran can be great, and he's meant to be talented, and he might be really promising. Like, I think Mitchell Robinson today is going to shit on this guy. And I thought we saw that in the minutes that they went heads up, where it was like, there's just a gulf in class right now between these players. Like, there's a gulf in class of what a guy Mitchell Robinson gives you and what a guy like Duran gives you at this point in time. And maybe we can close with this, because you know what, Stacy, you have been, contrary to popular belief among certain denizens of our strict chord, you have been the great Mitchell Robinson believer, the great Mitchell Robinson truther. And I want to say, like, I think, we've seen what he's done in the playoffs before, right? Against Cleveland in the first round of 2023, when he was healthy last year against Embiid. I mean, he was fantastic in that series. Are we sure that Mitchell Robinson isn't just like a great playoff riser? Is Mitchell Robinson a 16-game player that we've underrated and looked past because it's easy to look past a big that does have significant offensive flaws and does have limitations in terms of what he can do with the ball, but the things he can do in terms of affecting the game on the glass, protecting the paint. And I think I'm curious to get your thoughts on this, because this is what I think is maybe the most exciting thing about what he's shown since he's come back. It feels like he's a more intelligent player in terms of reading things right now than he has been in the past. And I also think he might be a better screen setter than he's been in the past.
Yeah, I mean, so is he a playoff riser? I think it's there's no back-to-backs, right? So for a player that conditioning has always been a little bit of a bugaboo, it's less so in the playoffs. You have more breaks
and health in general.
Yeah. He's also, since the Knicks have been a playoff team, right? He didn't play against Atlanta. He's also had the benefit of having a guy who's a starting center. He's always rotating with a high-level starting center, right? First it's Hartenstein, now it's Cat.
Wow, I think Taj erasure. Wow.
What?
Taj Gibson erasure.
No, no, that's not a thing, right?
I know.
Hartenstein's always been. Yeah. And he didn't play with Noel and Taj. But there are also aspects of the playoffs, they let more physical play go. I think he's been better of controlling his fouls. They let more physical play go. The game slows down. So I think with fewer possessions, each offensive rebound, each extra possession becomes more valuable, right? And yeah, so some of those things play in. On the downside, his lack of when you are slowed down, his lack of offensive ability shows up. The fact that he can't hit free throws isn't great. It's tough to play him late. But those things have contributed. And I will say, in terms of his improvement, I think you hit the nail on the head. I don't think it's just since he came back. Mitch has become a very cerebral player on defense, right? And I think this is one of the biggest. We've credited Tibbs with the development of guys like Quickly and Grimes, and Randall is able to turn it around here. Mitchell Robinson might be his best development success story. He was a very impactful player the year before Tibbs got here. I think he led the Knicks in a lot of advanced stats, but he only played 23 minutes a game. Couldn't stay out of foul trouble. He struggled on the defensive glass, right? He wasn't boxing out. and
foul trouble all the
foul
time.
trouble, right? And just and often wasn't in the wrong spot. Chased a lot of. He had one block attempt yesterday that led to an easy putback that drove me crazy. That was the kind of thing you'd see all the time early in his career.
I even thought that one you could understand because I forgot who was the guy. Like, they did get blown by whoever it was. You were kind of like, all right, he kind of
but there was a guy in position to contest. I think it was like a floater from Tobias Harris. It was more Tobias Harris had been killing them, so I kind of get it in that case. But he's become cerebral on defense. He understands. He quarterbacks that defense. That's, I think, by the way, you talk about the communication issues the Knicks have had. I think Mitch really helps them there. And so he can get guys in the right spots. I think some of the issues, people are like against Boston, well, he can't guard in the perimeter anyway. I think he struggles with a guy like Porzingis because I think any big really will, because you're helping in the pick and roll and then you have to recover and the guy can just move way out. But in if you're talking about just playing drop against a pick and roll, a pull-up shooter, I will say this: if they had Mitch in that Atlanta series, I think it's much more interesting. I think it would have been a huge.
I think they win that series. I honestly think he matters that much in that series.
And because we think about it, it's like, oh, he's not quick enough to switch on to. It's not necessarily about that. When you're that big, when you're 7'1", and that, the same thing goes with Rudy, right? You see him get cooked by Luka in an ice. It's like, okay, but 99% of guards do not want to take a pull-up three against Rudy Gobert, even if he's just giving them a little bit of space. And but it's really, I think, between the ears where Mitch has excelled. I think that people have overblown a little bit the decrease in athleticism. He had a couple of nice putback dunks, but I think, he's not the same player he was when he was 19, 20, and he was switching 5 positions and doing all this crazy shit. He's had to lean into that experience. And I think Tibbs deserves a ton of credit for helping to mold that part of his game. For a guy if you told me when he was 19 or 20, the biggest strength would be his defensive acumen.
I'm sorry, Steph put another fucking absurd 3.
Yeah, he's that's it. I mean, you're showing a lack of experience showing up again, right? Experienced team against a very young team. I mean,
Jalen Green versus Steph.
Well, they have Van Vliet, but it looks like he's having a stinker too. So, but yeah, I think that Mitch's development is a big feather in Tibbs's cap, because as promising as he was as a young player, that was not an obvious thing, and we've seen lots of bigs fail to develop like that. And to on the other side, I'll say this, right? As much as I'm still not very high on Jalen Duren's defense, he's come a long way too. And with those physical tools, when you're a player who works hard and is smart, and I think for all intents and purposes, it seems like those apply to Duren. That's another reason to be pretty positive on him going forward. But not this year. I think.
Yeah. I think, Mitch is he's a fucking gigantic human being. You can, Hartenstein's obviously a true center, right? He's a big guy. But even last year when Mitch got back, you were kind of like, oh, wait, yeah, that's the difference. Oh, yeah.
Hartenstein struggled defensively in both series. I think it'll be very interesting if he has to play Boston if he's even playable. But yeah, go ahead.
No, it's just to the point you're making about sometimes it's not about being able to switch out as much as the guy that's 7'1" with a huge wingspan. He might he can contest without necessarily closing the space the way that another guy needs to. And yeah, you can see it at various times, like that play I was talking about with Cade, where Cade he has an open 2-on-1, but Mitch is there and he's like, I'm not exactly sure what I should do here. Those are things that are pretty interesting. And yeah, I don't know. It's been exciting, honestly, to watch him since he came back. And these last few games, I think he's played, the game that really stood out to me that got me very excited. I know the Cleveland game where he played 33 minutes because the season was kind of noteworthy, but I thought he looked really good against Boston when we played them in that final game of the regular season, that final matchup against them in the regular season. I thought those minutes with him and Cat were really good in that game. And then yesterday, he had a couple putbacks yesterday. You were like, what? Have you been saving this all season? Is this why they've been managing you so fucking carefully? But maybe it is. Maybe this is why the Knicks have been managing him so carefully. Is they're trying to be very judicious about getting him back to that peak level, because when Mitch is right, when he is physically right, when he is feeling 100%, and I think he's saying he's playing at 269 now. I don't know what he was playing at in 2022, 23. I think, and even last year, but like he definitely looked bigger, like more bulky than he looks right now. He looks a bit more spry. He looks somewhere between like where he was when he came in, maybe even 2020, 2021, and where he got to in 2022, 23. He looks somewhere in between. But you're seeing some of that bounce with him, where you're like, oh shit. I mean, yesterday he blocked a 3 in the first half where he wasn't really that close. I think it was maybe Tobias maybe that shot the 3, but he blocked it. You got a piece of it. And it's like he wasn't to the point you're making again about like it's not necessarily about switching out on the perimeter, but just the ability to kind of close space without giving, an easy driving angle necessarily or giving a bunch of space. He has that ability, right, to kind of like defend the drive while still contesting. And those are the things that are special about him. And those are the things that make it, I don't want to get carried away after one game in the playoffs, but it's like, we are finally seeing this team fully healthy, right? Yesterday was the first time I think the entire active roster was fully healthy, including Ariel Hukporti, who was active yesterday. You want to take care of this series, but it's hard not to think like, okay, let's take care. Like, we win this series, we're going to play Boston. You have a fully healthy roster. And what I've seen from Mitch so far since he came back this year, not so much the physical stuff, because he's still been a little up and down at times, but the reading of the game and some of the decisions and understanding the coverages and understanding what teams are trying to do. That's what kind of makes me intrigued, not necessarily about our opportunity to win this series, but more about like, what does Mitchell Robinson look like in that series? And are we going to see a bunch of stuff from Mitchell Robinson here in this playoffs where maybe now we have to reconsider, like, do you roll the dice on a potential extension for him in a certain structure that makes sense for both the Knicks as the team and for him as a player?
Can you say that again? Sorry.
Just like in terms of like, if he plays really well in the playoffs, like you may have to consider the possibility of an extension to some extent with him, right?
Yeah, I mean, I still think they're going to look at all avenues, right? Would you rather a guy like Walker Kessler long term? Yeah. The fact of the matter is, Mitch has had lots of injury issues. Are these things long term? We don't know. But at this point, yeah, if you can get that kind of a package, we know that it's not just. We know that Cat next to a big can work good.
I'll throw a hypothetical at you. Let's say he has a good playoffs. The Knicks go to him in the offseason and they're like, look, we want to tack on a 2-year extension to your current deal. So he has 1 more year left on his deal. 2 years, let's call it $36 million, 1 year guaranteed, 1 year team option. Would you, again, assuming he plays well in the playoffs, is that something that you'd be like, yeah, I'm good with that?
Why would he want that with the team option? I guess he gets another 18 mil guaranteed,
right?
Which he might not.
Because I think the injury risk with him is real, and I don't know what his market looks like in a year. Like, do you really want to play out the year, or do you want to take the 18 million?
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see them doing that if he has a good playoffs. In terms of dollar value, you'd still want him to be attractive in trade, because you might decide that maybe there's another wing that allows you to, if you can move him for a guy like Jaren Jackson. I'm not saying this is available, but if there's a wing that allows you to play Cat 5 out, who's more dangerous on defense, you want to be able to move him even for something like that. But just be like, yeah, like while we're here, you're helping us. I think you would rather stay here, not have to test the open market. Let's give ourselves both, a little more flexibility. I think that makes sense.
Yeah. All right. Is there anything you wanted to touch on before we get out of here? Anything you saw in the playoffs over the weekend that you wanted to talk about?
I think it's hilarious that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was like 4 for 13, I think, and they won by 50 points. No, I think the playoffs have been fun so far. I watched all the games. I thought the end of that Denver Clippers game was really interesting. It was interesting how these teams are. I think it's I think Ty Lue is a really good coach, and the Nuggets have Jokic, and it was interesting how often like both teams make all of these adjustments, and it's just the Clippers are like, we're gonna leave this guy open, make him shoot from the corner. And Denver's like, all right, and it worked. But it's funny, of all these complex strategies, and it just still leads to that end game, which isn't any coach's fault or any team's fault. It's just that's sometimes what it comes down to. Yeah, no, it's been this game. I mean, I guess I'll ask right now since it's going on. How surprised are you about this Golden State Houston result? Would you pick Golden State?
I took them. I think I picked them in 7 to win this series. I wouldn't say I'm too surprised. I'm a little bit surprised at how much of a fucking like 1995 ass like rock fight this is. Though maybe I shouldn't be, right? Because Houston's a terrible, like they just don't have the half court creation that a normal new 2 seed has. What I will say is it's very, very obvious
Jimmy,
that
right?
Right. Yeah. And honestly, like Jalen Green this guy is fucking awful, man. He's just not a serious playoff player. And the sooner they move on from him, the better for them. Unfortunately, they gave him a 3-year, $100 million contract extension. I don't know how attractive that is. They do have picks, obviously, to attach to him. But I think the moment that they move on from him and get themselves an actual like quality perimeter guy that can create and initiate offense, like as good as Fred VanVleet is, he's obviously not that level of player, right? He's not a guy that you want to bank on to be your constant initiator. So the moment they get that guy, though, they've got a lot going for them. So very interested to see how the rest of the series goes. As good as this result is for Golden State, they scored 95 points tonight. It's not exactly like they, fucking put on an offensive masterclass here.
The makings of an offensive masterclass.
All right. I guess that's a good place to close it. Stacy, anything you want to plug before we get out of here?
I'll plug the Strickland. We've had a bunch of stuff come out. We did me, Shwin, Alex, Matt, and Miranda, and I put together a roundtable on some of our memories of the playoffs in the past. We should read Colin's recap of yesterday. It was a pretty fun one. And we have more content dropping tomorrow, so stick around and stay tuned.
Yeah, I will echo all those sentiments. I have nothing to plug personally, but all that applies. That is our show for today. I hope everybody has a great week. The Knicks play tomorrow. Then they're off until Thursday for Game 3. And be on the lookout. Maybe having a little watch party on Sunday for Game 4. So be on the lookout for that. All right, that is our show for today. Again, hope everybody has a great week, and I will see you on Friday. Peace.